everyone, and a huge welcome back to the channel for part 2 of our in-depth guide on how to install and dual boot Kali Linux on your laptop or PC. In the previous video, part 1 link in the description below and in the card above, we meticulously went through the process of creating our bootable Kali Linux USB drive. If you haven't completed that step yet, please go back and watch part 1 first, as it's absolutely essential for what we're about to do. Now that we have our bootable USB drive prepped and ready, it's time for the exciting part, actually installing Kali Linux alongside your existing operating system. This process involves booting your computer from the USB drive and carefully navigating through the Kali Linux installation wizard. We're going to take our time and go through each step in detail to ensure a smooth and successful dual boot setup. Before we proceed, I want to reiterate the importance of backing up any important data on your computer before making significant system changes like this. While we'll be partitioning carefully, it's always a good practice to have a backup just in case. The very first step is to tell your computer to boot from our USB drive instead of its internal hard drive. To do this, we need to enter the BIOS or UEFI settings. To access these settings, you'll usually need to press a specific key during the computer's startup sequence. This key is often displayed briefly on the screen right after you turn on your computer, usually before the operating system logo appears. Common keys include delete, F2, F12, F11, ESC, F1, F10, or even a combination of keys like Fn plus F2. The exact key varies significantly depending on your laptop or PC manufacturer and even the specific model. Once you've successfully entered the BIOS or UEFI settings, you'll be presented with a menu. The layout and options will vary depending on your system, but you'll need to look for settings related to boot order, boot sequence, startup devices, or something similar. These settings determine the order in which your computer tries to boot from different devices. Once you've placed your USB drive at the top of the boot order, it's crucial to save your changes and exit the BIOS or UEFI settings. Look for an option like Save and Exit, Exit Saving Changes, Save Configuration and Exit, or similar. Select this option and confirm if prompted. Your computer will then restart. If everything went correctly, your computer should now attempt to boot from the USB drive. You'll likely see some text on the screen indicating that it's trying to boot from an external device, and then you should be greeted with the Kali Linux boot menu. On the Kali Linux boot menu, you'll see several options. Live System allows you to run Kali Linux directly from the USB drive without installing it. This can be useful for testing or troubleshooting. Install and Graphical Install are for installing Kali Linux onto your hard drive. We're going to choose Graphical Install as it provides a user-friendly visual interface for the installation process. Use your arrow keys to navigate down to Graphical Install and press the Enter key. The Kali Linux Graphical Installer will now begin. The first screen you'll see will ask you to choose your preferred language. This language will be used throughout the installation process and will also be the default language for your Kali Linux system once it's installed. Select your language from the list and click the Continue button. Next, you'll be prompted to select your location. This is important for setting up the correct time zone, currency formats, and other regional settings for your system. Choose your country from the list and click Continue. Now, you'll need to configure your keyboard layout. This ensures that the keys you press on your physical keyboard correspond to the correct characters on the screen. Select the layout that matches your keyboard and click Continue. The installer might attempt to automatically detect your keyboard, but it's always a good idea to verify the selection. The installer will now ask you to configure the hostname for your Kali Linux system. The hostname is a name that identifies your computer on a network. You can enter any name you like, something descriptive like Kali Laptop or Pentis PC. If you're unsure, the default hostname is usually fine. Click Continue. You'll then be prompted for a domain name. Domain names are typically used in organizational or network environments. If you're installing Kali Linux on a personal laptop for learning or experimentation, you can usually leave this field blank and click Continue. We've now arrived at one of the most critical steps in the dual boot process, partitioning your hard drive. This is where we will allocate space on your hard drive specifically for Kali Linux, ensuring that it can coexist peacefully with your existing operating system without overwriting it. I cannot stress enough the importance of proceeding with caution here. Make absolutely sure you understand each step before you click Continue. Incorrect partitioning can lead to data loss on your existing operating system. For the most control and to ensure we create the partitions exactly as we need them for dual booting, we are going to choose Manual. Select the Manual option and click Continue. The installer will now proceed with configuring your network settings. In most cases, if you have a wired or wireless connection available, the installer will automatically try to configure it using DHCP. This means your router will automatically assign an IP address to your Kali Linux system. In most home network scenarios, you can simply click Continue. Next, the installer will configure the app sources. apt is the package management system used in Debian-based Linux distributions like Kali Linux. These sources are repositories where your system will look for software packages to download and install. The default sources configured by the installer are usually sufficient for most users. You can always add other repositories later if you need specific software. Click Continue. You might be presented with options to select specific software components to install. This includes different desktop environments. The default desktop environment for Kali Linux is XFCE, which is lightweight and efficient. You might see options for other environments like GNOME, KDE Plasma, and others. These offer different looks and feels. For beginners, sticking with the default XFCE desktop environment is usually recommended. You'll also see options to select collections of tools based on different categories, such as the top 10 most popular tools or specific tool categories like web application analysis or wireless attacks. For a first-time installation, especially if you're unsure, it's generally best to leave the default selections checked. You can always install additional tools later as you need them. Click Continue. Now we arrive at another critical step, installing the GRUB bootloader. GRUB is a boot manager that allows you to choose which operating system to start when you turn on your computer. It's essential for dual booting. The installer will ask if you want to install the GRUB bootloader to the master boot record or a specific partition. You'll want to select Yes to install GRUB to your primary hard drive. The installer will now proceed with the final stages of the installation, copying the necessary files to your newly created partitions and configuring your Kali Linux system. This process might take a bit longer depending on the speed of your computer and the options you selected. You'll see a progress bar indicating the status. Once the installation is complete, you'll see a message indicating that the installation has finished successfully. Make sure the reboot option is selected and click Continue. Your computer will now restart. This time, instead of automatically booting into your previous operating system, you should be presented with the GRUB boot menu. This menu will list both Kali New Linux and your other operating system. The very first time you boot into your new Kali Linux installation, it might take a little longer as it finalizes some initial configurations. You'll eventually be greeted with the Kali Linux login screen. Enter the username and password you created during the installation process. After logging in, you should see the default Kali Linux desktop environment. Congratulations! You have successfully dual-booted Kali Linux on your laptop or PC. One of the first things you might want to do after logging in is to open a terminal and update your system using the commands sudo apt update followed by sudo apt upgrade. This will ensure you have the latest software packages. Now take some time to explore the vast array of tools and features that Kali Linux offers. That concludes our comprehensive two-part guide on dual booting Kali Linux. You now have the power of Kali Linux at your fingertips. alongside your existing operating system. Remember to use these tools responsibly and ethically. I encourage you to explore the wealth of online resources and documentation available for Kali Linux to continue your learning journey. Let me know in the comments below what you plan to do with your new Kali Linux installation. If you found this video helpful and informative, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on future tutorials and cybersecurity related content. If you have any questions or encountered any challenges during the installation process, please leave a comment down below. I'll do my best to assist you. You'll also find some helpful links and resources in the video description below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this detailed guide has helped you successfully install Kali Linux. Stay curious, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next video.